I want to thank Quincy Public Library for allowing me to continue to do my outreach program to the community at large, so that hopefully my message of falls prevention and stress management can be heard, especially during these times when accessibility and technology can be a challenge for all of us. So welcome to the Falls Prevention and Stress Management Program. And my name is Debbie Lynn Toomey, Tufts Medical Center's Injury Prevention Coordinator. And a lot of my work centers around falls prevention for the aging population. I want to thank Tom for being here today. Tom Clasby is the director of Quincy's Elder Services. And I've been doing programs there before COVID, and I can tell you the center is buzzing. It was, before COVID, it was just such a robust and buzzing center that I'm just so proud to have Tom Clasby here to tell us more about it, the center, and what it offers and what it's doing now during COVID, and maybe any plans once COVID starts, letting up. So without further ado, Tom, welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's interesting. I think if I can just give a little history lesson on the center and how we came about. And I've been with the department since 1997. I've been director since 1998. And when I first began, I came on to build up our transportation program. When we have one of the best transportation programs really in the Commonwealth. It's been modeled after by several communities. We go to every medical facility in the city of Boston, most of the major hospitals. We go to Tufts. But in any medical facility here in the city of Quincy, as well as some in Braintree, Weymouth, and Milton, as well as the Kearney Hospital also. So we had quite an extensive transportation service. Where we kind of fell short for the community was we did not have a center at all. And so I was running programs in various places throughout the city. We utilized the library. My colleagues in government were tremendous in terms of letting us use their facility. We used the Parks Department often, but it was very difficult to have kind of consistent programming without a center. And there had been talk about building a center for a long time, but it kind of became a political football. And finally, when Mayor Koch became mayor, one of his campaign promises was that he would provide us with a senior center. And we took sight of an old school. At the time, the economy, as he came into office, the economy had just tanked. And with the financial crisis, he said, I can't build a building, but I can put $1.8 million into this existing building. And that's what we did. And to be honest with you, if I were to lay out a building, it wouldn't be a lot more different than what we have. I'd like more land outside, more usable space outside. But in terms of the building itself, it's really worked out well. And we have a big gymnasium. We do functions in that gymnasium. We have a little cafe where people gather. We have various rooms for exercise and social gatherings and things of that nature. The health department is also housed in the building here. So we have the public health nurses, which help us with some classes on occasion. When we became a dementia-friendly city, they were very helpful. And then, God forbid if we have somebody fall, it's terrific to have the nurses right there on staff. So I can continue with the history lesson if you want, or if you want questions, whatever works, Deb, you tell me.
Okay. Well, you know what, everybody, feel free to ask questions. Now's the time to, if you have any burning question about the center, activities it offers, what it's doing now. I'd like to learn a little bit more about the dementia. You mentioned dementia friendly. What is that? And
sure.
Yeah.
Sure. We're always looking for new things and try to stay on the cutting edge. So dementia-friendly cities became kind of a reality in the Commonwealth about 7 or 8 years ago. And I saw a little piece in the Globe, and at that time brought it to my assistant and said, let's take a look at this. And basically what we did, we worked with Ruth Jones of the health department, who was then a public health nurse, has now become the commissioner, is now our newest retiree, I think, for the city. But what we began to do is to educate all the municipal workers on how to recognize the signs of dementia and what is it to be done when we do recognize the signs. Because very often people would come to City Hall and they're exhibiting all this oddness, but really the person didn't either pick up that this person's got dementia, or if they did pick that up, they really didn't know how to deal with the individual or who to contact. Mm-hmm. So we're very proud that we everybody in the city that works with the public has gone through our training. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, in fact, shortly after some of the DPW guys took the training, they had a situation where a person came up to them and was asking for directions, but was very confused. And they noticed the car, driving somewhat erratically and going around in circles. And they flagged the car down, managed to get the person. They contacted us. They managed to get the person in their house, and then we could follow up with South Shore Elder Services. So that was a situation that ended well, and it was totally as a result of this training. Kit said before, we wouldn't know what to do. He said before, we probably would have not laughed at the person, but just laughed at the situation. Like, why is this person riding around in circles? So that's been one of the really proud moments for the dementia friendly. We've also brought in a memory cafe, and we try to work with the care partners to relieve stress for them, and to support them in any way that we can. So it's kind of a multifaceted thing. We've also educated the public. Very often when a person goes out, I'm sure as you're aware, that has dementia, a menu can be a daunting task for them. So we have a little card that the person with them, the care partner, can hand to the wait staff and say, please be patient. Someone at my table has dementia. And it's just a simple thing because that can be a really difficult thing for a person with Alzheimer's or some form of dementia to get into the restaurant environment and feel, isolated and nervous about being able to make a choice. So we're trying to make it just as easy as we possibly can. But I'll say this, but just if I could go back to a little bit more of the history. So we looked at the New England Centenarian study when we first opened the center. And that was done by Harvard University. It looked at why, some folks live to 100 and beyond and others don't. So what are the differences between those? Well, some of those differences were quite obvious. They weren't, obesity was limited. They weren't smokers. They had proper nutrition. But there were a lot of other things that, they had in common that you wouldn't hit off right at the moment. For instance, they had good social networks. They had a cause to get up for, to do something. They exhibited some kind of a faith. They had a positive attitude. So when we built the center, and they exercised, when we built the center, we tried to put all of these things in. Some of them we tried to sneak in, like line dancing is exercise, but if people enjoy it, they don't think they're exercising, they think they're just dancing, And the whole idea behind the cafe that we had was to combat loneliness. It was to have people come in and they could have a cup of coffee and make friends. And I'll say this, one of the things that's most impressed me is the friendships that have formed. I've had people that are very close, and I would have assumed that they'd grown up together, that they came as friends, but they met here. So that's been heartwarming and, just interesting to see develop.
Mhm.
It's hit or miss too with things. We've stumbled on stuff. Years ago, before we had a center, I wanted to do outreach to those who had lost a spouse or a partner, a grief, group, and we could never really get it off because we didn't have a particular place, and we were using some old abandoned housing units from the Navy, which were the units themselves were nice, but the whole atmosphere was empty. So when they came into these buildings, it was lonely. Now they're already dealing with grief, and it just wasn't a good setting for that kind of thing. So what we did instead is I used to write a letter of condolence. I still do write a letter of condolence to anybody who lost a spouse or a partner that we knew about. And, saying that you may find yourself in this situation now where you need services that you didn't need before. We're here for you. And we send them a little book on grief. And the response that we got from that, it's probably one of our most successful programs. And yet, the original intent kind of failed. We didn't have our grief group. Now today we offer the letter of condolence, we offer the book, and with the center we also have a grief group that meets. So it's worked out well. Another thing we have is a sing-along group that just was organic. We had a person that came in and played piano and gave piano lessons, and seniors would walk by and they'd say, "Oh, do you know, how are you going to keep them down on the farm? Or do you know, the songs from The Sound of Music?" And that just worked its way into this sing-along group that meets every Thursday now and is really vibrant.
Mm.
So those are the kind of things that we've done in regards to the New England Centenarian study. And then really AARP has come out with this whole concept of disrupting aging, which is, and I don't know if disrupting is the best term, as it is really kind of embracing aging, that aging is growth and that it's a challenge, but in some ways you can look at it as, a very dangerous game that we're playing. And I know, Deb, the stuff you do with falls prevention, all our goals are is to keep people, if we can, in their own homes or wherever they choose for as long as possible and keep them enjoying life, But we've learned really that, being a senior is really no different in many ways from being any other part of the community. Oftentimes, and a lot of times, it's politicians that'll call and they say, I want to have a thing for the seniors. What do seniors like? Well, the seniors like everything that everyone else likes. What are they concerned about? They're concerned about everything that everyone else in the community. If there's a new bridge going up, they'll have input. And they're not shy about telling their opinion many times. So we've kind of in the last couple of years tried to look at what AARP is doing and suggesting and kind of come up with this disrupt aging concept. Just to give you a little sample of like the kind of things that were going on before COVID hit here in the center. On Mondays, we'd have foot screenings, hearing screenings, a walking club, line dancing, Scrabble, and Zumba. Tuesdays, we'd have the piano lessons, Shine counselors here, exercise, quilting and sewing, a hand and foot card game, yoga for seniors, and pickleball. Wednesdays, Tai Chi, knitting group, laughter yoga, volleyball, blood pressure screenings, computer classes, and cornhole. Thursdays would be exercise, mahjong, sing-along, blood pressure clinic, chess lessons. A men's discussion group would be once a month. Computer classes again, yoga for seniors, book club, women's discussion group, Alzheimer's support group, pickleball. Fridays, bridge, Zumba, Tai Chi, a movie, and free simple wills. Now, when COVID hit and we had to shut down, and I was very reluctant to shut down, although, perhaps I didn't grasp the whole thing at the beginning, because my main concern, and it's still been a concern, is how this is affecting people. And I don't think we're going to know that for quite a while. But what we did is the things that we could do through kind of this form, Zoom or QATV. QATV has been tremendous asset to us throughout our time here. So they have for us, all kinds of classes every day. There's a block of programming, and I won't read them all off, but it's similar to the stuff that we had. But every day there's a block from about 9 a.m. to 1:30 with programs that were either offered here or are offered at other seniors centers that they can participate in. So it's not perfect, but it's better than nothing. And then the other thing that we've done is we make phone calls, wellness checks. We've sent cards out. The Friends group just sent Valentine's Day cards out. So we've tried to keep in touch wherever we can, and anything that we can do online or over the phone, we've been doing those things. So I hope I didn't ramble on too long, but I wanted to give you kind of a broad picture of what it is that we do.
I can't, the center is so robust, and I really appreciate you sharing with us all this information. And I have so many questions to ask you. So you talked about what you offered during COVID, and, what the center is trying to do as far as supporting the aging population out there during COVID. And you also talked about, I think what you were talking about, the blue zone, where certain areas in the world there are groups of people who are living longer. And because of that, they had a positive mindset, they had a faith, they exercised a lot, and they ate well.
Right.
Which is wonderful. You also talked about the Harvard study, which is a longitudinal study that showed that, actually, I think it's a 7-year study. They basically came to the consensus that the secret to living a long and happy life is through social engagement. Mm-hmm. So question is, how much can the center, or maybe the center is doing this already, how much influence can the center have on the city of Quincy on helping it become more age friendly?
Yeah, I'll say there's always more to do. There's always more to do. And, but I will say this. I knew when we built the center that it would be a good thing. I had no idea the impact that it would make in people's lives. I've had people come up and say, I was suffering from depression, and that's gone because I have, a place to come. So I had no idea the positive impact that it would have. I think, though, there are still challenges, and you're right. Combating ageism is something that we have to do. Just the kind of language we use. When I was speaking earlier, I talked about care partners, because it used to be caregivers, and that kind of puts the person who's receiving the help in a disadvantaged kind of language. So we say care partner as opposed to that, because there's give and take. We can learn from people with dementia, and we can have beautiful moments with them. So I think the attitudes have to change and shift. And it's interesting. I was listening, took a long road trip, and I was with 2 friends, and they were listening to a comedy thing on satellite radio, and almost every comic had some kind of a bit piece about an old person, and it was always derogatory. And the 2 guys with me didn't pick up on it. I do, because I work with elders, I guess. That's, you wouldn't tolerate that in other groups, other demographic groups. Why should we tolerate it with seniors? Becoming a senior is not becoming a bad person or a burden to society. I had a friend from the Czech Republic, and I love this. She told me that they never ask how old you are. What they say is, how many years do you have? because in their culture, it's a really great thing to have longevity. It's a gift. Each year is a gift. So there's how many years do you have? You know, and people are very proud to talk about how many years they have.
Yeah, I love that. That is wonderful. I love it.
Yeah.
There's a question here. So let's see. Do you have any advice on fall prevention?
Yeah, take your course. No, I think, you know, that is definitely something, obviously, that is common. There's a lot of education that could be done. We try to do that regularly. It's interesting. My parents are both gone now, but my mother was a person that was very aware of her surroundings, and very aware of the layout of the apartments that she was in, or when she went to a place, she would really watch out for things on the floor. My dad was a person that kind of dragged his feet. I could almost see by working, he was much more at risk, even though I think he was in better shape and more spry than her. But just the kind of not aware of his surroundings and the way that he held his feet, he would drag his feet rather than step up. So I think, you know, we try to hit, like, as I mentioned before, we try to hit a lot of those things without, I guess, in disguise. So something like yoga can help with balance. So we'll encourage someone who we may see that has a balance issue. Geez, you should try the yoga class. And I don't go up to them and say, I'm afraid you're going to fall and hurt yourself, you know. But have you ever thought about yoga? You should really like that. There's great people in there, and that kind of thing. So that's the approach that I try to take. But I think, you know, falls prevention is huge. You know well, all the damage that can be done by one little fall, and it's not unusual to see someone, when they take a fall, really decline rapidly after that.
Right. And falls prevention is not just it's not just physical activity. It's also, you mentioned awareness of your surroundings. You know, when I was doing, I did a falls prevention program in Milton, and one of the women who was really excited to join, she is, from what I heard, I never met her. She's like one of those people who's always busy, always working out. She's buzzing here and there, here and there. And because of that personality, a week before she was to start the program, she was doing some errands. She wasn't thinking about what she was doing. She stepped off the sidewalk the wrong way and broke her ankle. So I never got to meet her. She would have been the perfect person to join my program, along with the other people who lived in the community. But, you know, so it's not just physical activity. Of course, physical activity has a lot to do with it. But you did mention dancing and singing. And sometimes with singing comes dancing, or we're swaying.
Right. But very, very often.
Studies have shown that dancing is actually
and you know, like, right. So I guess, you know, that we try to hit it clandestinely with stuff like that, but also, you know, it's important to have programs like yours and similar programs, because the education's ongoing. And the other thing for us is, like, we're always getting new members, always. Mm-hmm. So there's, you know, there is a repetitiveness of some of the programs that we do, but we're always getting new people coming in. So it's a first for them.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's good. Now, as far as the care partners that you talked about, what other types of resources do you have for them? It doesn't have to be children who are of aging parents. It could be like spouse, right?
Very often it's
more about that.
Yeah, very often it's spouse, and it's important to have some kind of a network for them, because, you know, they're in a stressful situation, and many of them, they're in 24/7. So it's good for us to come here and get a little outlet, but also just education. You know, when a person starts to exhibit memory loss, you know, sometimes the partner will think, well, if I just, you know, repeat, well, what do you mean you don't remember that? Well, you know, you remember that. Of course you remember that. Well, so just kind of education. And one of the things we tell them is, you know, think of you're sitting at a desk and you have two drawers. And in this first drawer over here, you know, goes your short-term memories. That's where you keep those. And in this drawer over here on the right, you keep your long-term memories, your memories of your childhood, the day that you got married. So when you open this drawer, you can usually go back on those things and see them, you know, vividly. But when you open this drawer, the short-term memories, what you had for breakfast, there's no bottom in that drawer. You know, now again, we're explaining this to the caretaker, not to the individual in terms of what's happening. But so when they reach into that, what did you have for breakfast? And they don't know, they feel foolish. They're not foolish and they're not stupid by any means, but it's simply in a place where it can't be retrieved. So try to concentrate on those old things, older memories, you know, and, you know, maybe somebody's been in the Navy and they love to talk about their time in the Navy. And you could just say, you don't even have to say, hey, you were in the Navy, weren't you? It's like, you know, I saw a sailor today and boy, he looked sharp in his uniform, or she looked sharp in her uniform. Weren't you in the service? And that'll bring them into, you know, kind of a happy place, and a place where they can have a conversation with you. And maybe you have heard those stories again, but there's always something new to be learned. But the main thing is, I guess, just don't argue about the short-term things. And it's surprising because a lot of people, particularly when it first starts to occur, they think, well, I can get her to remember. You know what you had. We had this. Don't you remember that? You know, and again, it's not being nasty or it's just not understanding the complexities of dementia. So we try to help those partners understand that. And then with the Memory Cafe and stuff, it gives them an opportunity to get to know one another, and they can swap stories. And it's okay to laugh about some things, because some things are quite humorous on one end, you know, but they may find that as a little stress reliever where they have common stories to tell one another. So it's important for them to have that support. And by doing that, you know, you're relieving them of some stress, and they're becoming better care partners as a result.
Definitely. It makes them recognize that they're not alone. And any type of maybe like feelings of guilt, frustration, any type of feelings that they feel like, oh, I shouldn't be feeling this, having somebody there to give a compassionate ear who understands is very important. And that is something that the cafe offers, right?
Yeah. Hey, Deb, if I can just mention, I'm just thinking about, we've had the Senior Olympic Games for years. Predates me by quite a while. And it was actually the catalyst for the Massachusetts Senior Games, and started here when this was just a community center, Beechwood on the Bay, and the Quincy Recreation Department got together, and they had a one-day series of event, and that has now grown into, we weren't able to do it this year because of COVID, and we probably won't because it's the spring. We probably won't be able to do it again, but 2022 will be up and running. And we have it's longer than a week. It's a week and a half of athletic events in various venues throughout the city. And those are track and field events. We have walking competitions. We have pickleball. We have golf tournament. We have bocce tournament that goes on. Bocce is a great sport for seniors. You know, but again, all those things go into that kind of building up in terms of building for balance, and because people train, they take it very, very seriously. And the competition is real. We have bronze, we have gold, bronze, and silver medals. So many of them compete on train on a weekly basis. Some don't. Some just jump in at the end. We've always had pickups too, where we're up doing a basketball shoot, and someone will just happen to be watching by, and they'll watch for a little bit, and they say, "Can I join?" We'll sign them up on the spot and have them partake in that competition. But again, that's socialization, that's exercise. We have many people that have memory issues that are quite capable and really enjoy participating in those physical things. So, but that's one of our most successful programs, and it's been going on for, like I said, I think it's close to 30 years now.
Yeah. Wow. That's great. That's great. Something to look forward to, everybody. If you're not a member already, please sign up. You mentioned in the beginning transportation. And can you talk a little bit more about that? And also, if there's time, I'm not sure if people are familiar with what the Shine Counselor can do for them.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah, like I said, I came on board as transportation manager. Quincy Councils on Aging, the state had, I guess, mandated that every community in the Commonwealth should have a council on aging. But they didn't define what it had to be, which was a good thing, because they thought most communities they know what their needs are, so they can tailor it to what, it is for their community. Quincy went into services right away. And as I said before, we were kind of behind the 8 ball in the social aspects, because it really has to be both. But one of the things that we went heavy on service was transportation. Transportation always ranks number 1, 2, or 3 when it comes to a survey anywhere. You look at national surveys, and almost always. Now, we're seeing a little change, and it's interesting, because I think when I first came on board, that senior population oftentimes only had one driver in the household. A lot of women did not drive. Today, not so much. However, it's still an issue, because some people reach a point where they realize, or somebody else realizes, you can't drive anymore. And most people, a lot of people do it on their own. I just got a call the other day, to my point here. This woman said that I gave up my license. And it's a devastating thing when you think about it. We're 16 and a half when we get our licenses, most of us. We're driving from that time, right up to the present time. It's a huge source of independence. I feel like going out to the store to get a bottle of soda, I run out, and all of a sudden, bang, I'm faced with, I have to be dependent on some other person or find another way. So our service isn't perfect by any means, but as I mentioned, getting to the doctor, that's free. If you're 60 or over, we'll get you to any medical facility in the city of Quincy. And that could be, your general practitioner, or it could be a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a podiatrist or a homeopathic place. I mean, we have a kind of broad range on what that would be. And that's free. They just have to call here and say, my appointment is such and such a time. We like to have a 2-week notice on medical if we can. If we can take you in an hour, we will, and we do sometimes. It's just that it fills up so quickly. We advise people to call 2 weeks in advance. And a lot of times what happens, if they have a follow-up with the doctor's office will call us right then and there and say, we want to schedule Mr. Jones again for 2 weeks from now or a month from now, and we'll put it in the book. So there's no waiting list at all for that. And it's available to anyone 60 or over. We have another service, and there is a waiting list for that, and that's a social service. So we call that the Transvan service. It's also not free, although it's extremely affordable. It's $80 for the year, which doesn't even cover our fuel cost. Mm-hmm. And that's for anything but medical. So hairdressing appointment, or go to the barber shop, or go to lunch with a friend, go shopping, anything other than medical. And the only reason we have the waiting list for that is because medical has to be our priority. We feel that the other stuff is not as it's important, but it's not as important to getting to see your doctor and health professional. But during COVID, the transportation service has worked throughout. And originally, when the first real shutdown came, when people were quarantined, we started utilizing our vehicles to get food to not just seniors, but anybody who was quarantined in the city. The Board of Health would say, this person can't get out, or they have no one that can get them. We worked with Interfaith Social Services, usually, who had a lot of people that needed food but had no way of getting out to pick it up. So we started doing that. As things began to loosen up and doctor's office began to taking patients, so we're still actually doing some of that, but we're back to where we're taking people primarily for medical appointments.
And so, Tom, these are the people who qualify. Do they have to be members, or do they have to be just residents of Quincy?
No, just residents of Quincy. I'm glad you brought that up, because we have 25,000 seniors. We have close to 10,000 members here. So that's a pretty good, the members, but no, you don't have to be a member of the Kennedy Center. And many of the people that use transportation are not. A good portion of them are, because a lot of them that are on that Transvan program will use that program to get here. They can get the standing appointment where, every Monday, Wednesday, or Friday, or every day if they want. They can get down to the center.
Okay. And just thinking falls prevention here. To get into the van, are there big steps? Can people with walkers use the van? And is there the driver? Does the driver help the passenger into the van and also out of the van? What is the policy there? And
good point. So as a policy, we're curb to curb. So we don't go into people's houses. We don't go into the buildings. However, the drivers are excellent, and they do go right up to the front door. And if somebody needs assistance, they do provide assistance. And they've all been trained, like with the wheelchair lifts and stuff like that. There's a certification that the state gives out. So they go through a training once a year to refresh that on how to operate the wheelchair lifts. When we first started, we had these little vehicles. Transportation come a long way, and we had these little vehicles, and financially they made sense, but they were absolute disasters in terms of trying to get seniors in and out of them. Just requiring them. So a big, I guess to answer your question, a big part of that is, yes, we try to get vehicles that are particularly geared towards seniors. So you'll have your wheelchair lift on them. You'll have the bus doors that open up wide with a railing actually on either side. They have the non-slip floors, because that definitely is an issue. And then if somebody really has a mobility issue, they're allowed to take a caregiver with them. Usually it's but not usually a spouse. I'd say usually on that end it'd be more a child or a friend, a neighbor, or we can make arrangements like when we arrive at the doctor's office, we'll call the office and tell them, Mrs. Smith is here, and they'll come out and provide some assistance for her to get in safely. So we work in partnership with the facilities as much as we can. Wow,
that's great. Wow. Thank you. I didn't know about that feature, and I'm really glad that we were able to talk about that. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. No, we get compliments all the time on transportation, and it's funny because as an administrator's point of view, you can sometimes look at the negative, personality conflicts and all those kind of things. But but we really, we get a lot of compliments on transportation, and the drivers do a really good job. So I have to always be mindful of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, as a nurse, I've been a nurse for over 30 years, and sometimes I have to discharge a patient who lives by themselves, and they don't qualify to go in an ambulance. We have to put them in a taxi, and we have to ask these specific questions, who's going to be there at the front door, because the taxi driver, I don't know if anybody uses taxi anymore, but, they would just kind of, wait for you outside of the hospital, and then the patient is helped into the car, to the cab, and then, hopefully there's somebody in the receiving end, a neighbor maybe, or somebody can help that person out. So it's really important to know what you have for access or availabilities and resources, and the limitations of each one, because sometimes we learn the hard way, right? So
right. Yeah.
So we are 2 minutes left of the program. I can't believe this time flew by. I want to make sure I take the time to thank you, Tom, for being here.
Oh, no.
We appreciate, everything you've shared with us, and you being here. Is there one last thing that you could, words of wisdom or advice that you could share with us here before we leave the program for the day?
We didn't really talk about technology, and it's interesting when you were talking about transportation. That's playing a positive role already. Although many of the seniors aren't yet savvy with technology, as the generations actually even behind me become seniors, they'll be much more technologically savvy, and things like Uber and Lyft are really going to alleviate those transportation issues. That's just kind of one way that technology is helping. We're seeing it now. Some councils on aging are actually utilizing that. The state had a pilot program where if the seniors didn't have a smartphone, they would do it through their transportation offices and make arrangements. But I think down the road, particularly for even the generations much younger than me, they're already using it all the time. So that's going to be a huge advantage for them.
Yeah. So basically, the name of the game is just always keeping in the know. We're never too old to learn how we could navigate through life and making our quality of life that much better, right? So we are at the top of the hour. Again, Tom, thank you so much for being our guest speaker today. Bye-bye, everybody. Have a great week.